Welcome back to another AP Pre-Calc video. I'm Mr. Hibble. Today we are looking at our 3.2 notes. 3.2 covers coterminal angles, reference angles, and we're also going to be looking at just quadrants these angles kind of end in. This is a good video to watch to kind of get an introduction into radians and degrees. Today we're really focusing on degrees for this. But it'll help us get into the unit circle in our next video. This is some ideas that you're going to want to understand to better memorize the unit circle. Let's go ahead and get started just with some definitions. The first part says the starting position of an angle. That is always called the initial side. The position after rotation, so wherever your angle ends, that is called the terminal side. For example, if I have some angle here, maybe I start on this bottom part and I rotate up. This would be the initial side. This other one would be the terminal side. You can have two different types of angles. You could have positive angles, you could have negative angles, and those are just caused by rotating different directions. If you have a positive angle, you are going in the order of the quadrants, meaning that you are rotating counterclockwise. If you don't know your clocks too well, that means we are going this direction. Negative angles are the other way. That just means they are clockwise. And that would go down first and then up. Again, positive and negative angles, that's just based off of the quadrants. If you don't have your quadrants memorized, quadrant 1 is the top right of the X and Y axis. Quadrant 2, quadrant 3, and quadrant 4 going around counterclockwise. Few things to note about your quadrants. X and Y are both positive in quadrant 1. If you go to quadrant 2, you're on the negative X side. Quadrant 3 is negative for both, and quadrant 4 is negative for the Y. Okay, so just some things to note there. Number 5 there says the order of the quadrants, just like we said, is counterclockwise rotation. I'm just going to put CC to abbreviate that. Number 6, if two angles have the same initial and terminal side, we call those coterminal angles. Coterminal angles are just angles that start and stop at the same position. Realize if you go in the negative direction or the positive direction, you could end at the same spot going different amounts. Or if you just go in a circle, right? We're just talking about rotations. You could rotate multiple times in a circle before stopping as well, giving you the same thing. Let's look at number 1 with that idea here. It says find the coterminal angles between 0 and 360 degrees. Well, for negative 466, so that means I'm going to start over here on the right. We always start there. And I'm rotating backwards because it is negative. I know that if I do an entire circle, I go 360 degrees. So I know I have to go more than that. Well, if I want to go negative 464, how much further past 360 do I have to go? Well, if I look at 464, I could add to it because it's negative. I could add 360 to this value to see how much further past 360 after a full circle I need. In this case, it's negative 104 degrees. So my rotation continues then. Let me redraw that real quick. So we rotated once around, but I'm going to go past it. We're at negative 104. Remember, every right angle is 90 degrees. So if I know I get to here, this is negative 90, negative 180, negative 270, negative 360, and so forth. I need to go negative 104, so I need to get to roughly right here. Okay, well, we need the positive angle that it took to get there. I need an angle between 0 and 360 to get to that spot. So I just want to look at rotating to this. Well, we know that we went 90 degrees, we went 180 degrees, and a little bit more. We could simply find this by taking 360 and getting rid of that 104 degrees. That would give me the positive angle that I went, which is 256 degrees. The red angle there is a coterminal angle between 0 and 360. Let's look at number 2. Number 2 says that you have 1,136. That means I'm doing a lot of circles. It's in the positive direction. Every circle is 360. Let's start taking those away to see what we get. 776, subtract another 360. We get down to 416. That's still more than a circle, though. I subtract again and get 56 degrees. So all I need on this one then is just how far do I go? Well, if I start in that same spot, I know that every axis I get to is just another 90 degrees. So in this case, 56 does not even get me to that first spot. So my reference angle here, my coterminal angle here is 56 degrees. That is coterminal angles. Let's go ahead, let's look at another idea here where we just want to identify the quadrant the angle lands in. Again, it's good to note that every 90 degrees is kind of the next axis that you get to. For example, 330, that's more than 90, that's more than 180. That value lies between 270 and 360. I know this quadrant is quadrant 4. Number 3, same idea, identify the quadrant. It is a negative angle though, so I'm going the other way. Negative 90, negative 180, negative 270 to get around. That value lies between 90 and 180. So this one would be in quadrant 2. Or sorry, that's quadrant 3 there. Quadrant 3, my fault. Just saying the wrong thing. There is your answer for both of those. Let's kind of pair this together now. But now we're also going to be talking about reference angles. You heard me mention that earlier on accident. But a reference angle is always an acute angle. Remember, an acute angle is less than 90 degrees. An acute angle, that is also always formed with the x-axis. So in this case, it does not matter if my angle starts on this right side of the x-axis, because if I had an angle that was over here, I need it to be an acute angle. So it needs to connect to the x-axis that is closest to it, so it is below 90 degrees. The red angle and a blue angle would be an example of reference angles. Realize your reference angle is always positive, and then you always mention the quadrant it is in as well, because that just gives you all the information to know where it is at. So looking at number 1, 435, again, that's more than a circle. Let's break it down. That is really just 75 degrees. So if I were to look at that, that is less than 90, so that only gets me to here. That itself is already an acute angle. It is already less than 90 degrees. So that is the reference angle, but I also need the quadrant. This is quadrant 1. 75 degrees is the angle in quadrant 1. The next one, negative 167. It's less than 360, so I don't need to go around multiple times. But it is negative, so I'm going to go the opposite direction. It's between 90 and 180, so it ends here, just going into that next quadrant. To me, that looks like quadrant 3, but we need to represent this angle using the x-axis and being acute. The x-axis it's closest to is here. It is an acute angle to here. So if this was negative 167, I need to know what else we were left with. Well, if this entire x-axis is 180 degrees, I could take 180, subtract the 167, and find that this angle here must be 13 degrees. Our reference angle is 13 degrees. The quadrant we are in is quadrant 3. Let's look at a last example. 120, positive 120, that is between 90 and 180. So that gets me over to here. However, I need a reference angle, so it needs to be an acute angle. So I need to utilize this section of the x-axis. I need to make this angle. Well, I need to know what else was left. So again, I can utilize 180. I can subtract 120 from it to see how much further I'd need to go to get to the x-axis. That would be 60 degrees. 60 degrees is the reference angle. We are in quadrant 2 there. That is our final answer. Thank you for watching. That's just a little bit on different types of angles. Next, we're going to go ahead and break down the unit circle. See you then.